When you're teaching Warrior One, are you ever confused about the position of the back foot and what you need to be cueing in order to get people into better alignment? So first, what we need to agree to is that every single pose has a basic shape to it. And within that shape is a number of joint movements, as well as muscles that concentrically contract to create those movements. Now, the shape is what the shape is, meaning for thousands of years, yogis have been practicing yoga, and the shapes are defined basically by history. Now, it doesn't mean you can't modify something or change something. I always like to say have a reason for why you're changing it, but we first have to agree that there's just basic alignment with every single pose, and that's just carried on through history. So when we look at Warrior One, the back foot, well, let's go this way. The back hip is an internal rotation. It just is, right? It's not really up for discussion. It's not really a hot take. It's baked into the shape of the pose. But in order to understand that, you have to understand anatomical movements. And the reason sometimes teachers get confused is they're just teaching to the shape, and they've missed out on an opportunity to deepen their understanding of the shape by not just teaching to the shape, but recognizing what is the anatomical movement happening, in this case, in the back hip. So when we look at the movement that the hips make, the hips can move through a number of different planes of motion. So in the sagittal plane, it's flexion and extension. In the frontal plane, it's abduction and adduction. And in the transverse plane, it's external and internal rotation. And every single joint movement is expressed in a range. So this is shoulder flexion, as is this, all the way up to here. But everything along this line is shoulder flexion. So now when we go back to Warrior One and we say, well, what's happening in this back hip? Well, in the shape of Warrior One, this hip is internally rotated. And that is connected to that sort of age-old cue to turn the back foot to 45 degrees, meaning that if the foot was turned out, you see how the hip turns out? And really what's happening is the hip is driving what the foot is doing, because the hip is higher up on the kinetic chain. The foot is only going to do what the hip's doing because it's lower on the chain. So if you have somebody with their back foot turned out in Warrior One, that's because their back hip is in external rotation. But the pose has a back hip in internal rotation. Thus, you'd want to cue that person to turn their back foot in. It's just easier for people to understand what you want them to do here if you speak to the foot, even though it's down the kinetic chain. What you really want is the appropriate hip movement. And so I hope that helps. The position of the joints is defined by the shape, but all yoga teachers have a huge opportunity to up-level their confidence and skill and their ability to really be helpful in their cues when they're not just teaching to the shape of the pose, but when they understand the joint movements, the muscles creating those movements, and that allows them to confidently share their cues, change their cues, give, like we're doing in this case, corrective cues. So that is what allows you to be a more complete, confident, empowered yoga teacher. That underlying understanding of anatomy and how to apply it to movement.